Okay, Rabotai, we are on the 12th day of Ilchot Shabbat. What are the parameters of adding on water in the Dafina? This is a huge controversy. People are very confused, and this is something that is very relevant when you wake up in the morning and you smell that something is burning and you have guests coming. Shuma, what are you gonna do? Tell your kids. No. So there's a pasuk about that. Telling your kids, the pasuk tells us, Lo taseh melacha ata ubincha, right? You can't, not only you, even your animals can't do work for you. So for sure your kids can't do work. They're not worse than that. Even in LA, you're right. Your kids have to, you're not allowed to tell them to do melacha for you. We'll learn about that separately. What are you supposed to do? So we mentioned beforehand, let's get into the different issues that could be involved over here. We mentioned last time that bishul on Shabbat is categorically forbidden. That means taking cold water and putting it in the Dafina on Shabbat is the isur de oraita, according to all opinions. Somebody takes cold water and puts it in his Dafina on Shabbat, that's violating a Torah prohibition. And one cannot touch the Dafina on Shabbat. It is absolutely forbidden. Clear, right? What happens if it's water that's cooked already? So, well, that depends. If it's water that's cooked, that cooled down less than being yad soledet bo, which means less than being at a boiling point that you can't stick your finger inside, so then the Shulchan Aruch says that's also called bishul. The Rama is a little more lenient if it was once cooked already and now it's warm. But the Shulchan Aruch says if it's hot, then going under yad soledet bo is going to be a bishul. Okay? So now what happens if I want to take hot water, boiling water, and I want to put it in the Dafina? Logic would dictate that there is no problem. However, there's a commentary of Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah was one of the early Rishonim. He was actually Mechutan with the Ramban. And Rabbeinu Yonah mentions, he has the famous Sefer Sha'arei Teshuvah that we learn in Elul. Sha'arei Teshuvah of Chodesh Elul. Rabbeinu Yonah says that when somebody pours from the Dafina from the water into his chamim on Shabbat, so he says there are problems over here. And he mentions a few problems. These are the two problems he mentions. One of them is that as soon as the water leaves, it could be that it has a status of less than yad soledet bo because it doesn't have the walls around it to protect it. The second issue, says Rabbeinu Yonah, is that it's probably not hot. It's not because already you took it. It might be that you switched it already into different things. It's not hot. We are concerned that it's going to be less than yad soledet bo. So the question is, what is the halacha? If you're going to say that if you pour the hot water and you know that it's still hot, but it's not in the walls anymore, so that's less than yad soledet, you're not allowed to pour things into your cholent because it's going to be less. It doesn't have the walls around it, even though it's yad soledet doesn't have the walls around it. That's going to be called, according to Rabbeinu Yonah, bishul, because you don't have. It's not called a kli rishon. It's not called a primary vessel because the walls are not around it. But according to the second answer, Rabbeinu Yonah is concerned that it's not hot. But if it is hot, then you have no problem. So it's known that Hagan Rav Ovadia Yosef has a teshuvah on this in Yechavedat Chelek Bet, Siman Chav Bet, and he goes in the stringent opinion over here that absolutely Rabbeinu Yonah meant that if the wall, once you pour and it leaves the walls and it becomes a place where the water is, even though it's boiling hot, but there's no walls around it, that's called bishul. Therefore, Rav Ovadia Yosef is very stringent on pouring hot water in your dafina, and the only solution he has for those that their cholent might burn is before Shabbat, you'd have to put water in a plastic bag in the cholent, and if it overheats, you puncture it. So that's why it's already in there. Now, obviously, that's not very practical, and a person has to remember beforehand. If one opens the commentaries of the Shulchan Aruch, he'll see that most commentaries followed the second opinion, which is that we are concerned that the water might have cooled off. and might be less than yad soledet. But if it would be yad soledet, if it would be a boiling, then there's no problem whatsoever. Therefore, Rabbi Shalom Misas has a teshuvah on this, quoting from the Magen Avram and the Taz and many other sources, that as long as it's hot, there is no bishul. For example, the Pri Megadim says if you take from one very hot cup and put it inside a cold cup, but it's still very hot, you could put that back in. Even according to Shulchan Aruch, you could put that back in. Pri Megadim has a safek about it, and the Chazon Ish says absolutely you could put it back in, because if it's hot, it's not possible to say bishul on something that's already hot. The Rama says if it's warm, there's no bishul, but if it's hot, for sure you'd be able to put hot back into hot. And Rav Or Litzion, Rav Ben Zion Bashol also agrees. He says for sure you could put in hot water back into the Dafina, as long as it's hot. And he concurs with this opinion, and he says that absolutely one would be allowed. There are many other Sephardic poskim, including Rabbi Misoda Kohen from Tafila Let. He was in the yeshiva Abir Yaakov. He was a student of Ateret Roshin, Rabbi David Abu Chatzera. And Rabbi Yosef Mesas, Rabbi Moshe Malka, many others of Moroccan poskim, they say that the minhag was always to be able that if your dafina is burning, you could take hot water and you could pour it in. Rav Ovadia Yosef says it's asur. He's based on one opinion in Rabbeinu Yonah that is a very big chidush, that is saying that even if water is boiling hot, once it left the parameters, it has the status, according to Rabbeinu Yonah, of less than yad soledet. But lehalacha, we don't follow that opinion. Lehalacha, as long as something is boiling hot, there is no further bishul to it. So as long as somebody knows that the water is boiling hot, and while he's pouring it in, then he's allowed. So what you can do is that you could take it directly from the urn, and you put the dafina under the urn. But then there's a problem of basar bechalav, because then the steam from the meat is going to go right into the urn, and if you want to use the urn for a coffee, that's not a good idea. So the best thing, you could even put it in another cup and you pour it right away, and that would be okay. Now you're going to tell me there's a problem of, I'm sorry, you have a problem of chazara maybe, that you are returning things back on the plata. So over here, there's going to be a discussion that as long as you are taking it directly and you had in mind to do that, then it's not gonna be a problem of chazara putting. So it doesn't look like you're cooking because it's right away coming from the heat of the pot. But absolutely, if it's cold water, you're not allowed. And according to Sfaradim, even if it became warm, you're not allowed. For the Ashkenazim, if it became warm, you would be allowed. Chazaku baruch.